right, let's dive into something pretty interesting.
Sounds good.
On the Costa del Sol in Spain,
Okay.
there's this Roman bath complex, Las Bóvedas, and it's raising a lot more questions than answers.
Really?
Yeah, this isn't just your average bathhouse. It's really architecturally sophisticated,
Hmm.
and it hints that there might have been like a much bigger settlement nearby.
Oh, wow.
But here's the thing. There's no trace of a major Roman city anywhere close by.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so what's going on?
Right.
Well, there's this research article by Navas and their team. It was published in 2024 in the Journal of Coastal Research.
Okay.
And they think that maybe the coastline has changed a lot over the centuries, and that might have changed the landscape that the Romans would have known.
So, like, completely changing what it would have looked like back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So what's interesting about Las Bóvedas is how big it is and the design.
Okay.
We're talking a large octagonal structure,
Yeah.
and it's built entirely on river deposits of peridotite.
Peridotite.
And, that rock, it's known for being really durable,
Right.
which might explain why the baths have survived so long.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the complex is way too big to have just been for private use.
Yeah.
It seems like it had to have had a public function, and it would have been for a pretty sizable population.
Uh-huh.
But then the question remains, where was everyone living?
Right. Yeah, where was this population?
Exactly.
That's so strange.
So we have this fancy bath complex, but no city to go with it.
Yeah.
And that's where the idea of Silniana comes in.
Silniana.
Yeah, this possible Roman settlement that's mentioned in some historical texts.
Oh,
And some scholars think that Las Bóvedas was part of that settlement.
interesting.
But if Silniana was so important, why haven't we found more of it?
Yeah, that's a good
A
question.
big mystery.
It is. That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
The historical texts that mention Silniana, they're kind of vague,
Okay.
and they contradict each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't even agree on where it was located. And if you add in that research by Navas and their team, it makes you think that maybe the coastline has been totally reshaped by nature.
Over a really long time.
Yeah, over thousands of years.
So wait, are you saying that Silniana could be underwater?
It's possible, yeah.
That's crazy.
It is pretty wild.
Tell me more about these coastal changes.
Okay, so imagine this, the Messinian salinity crisis.
Okay.
This was a time when the Mediterranean Sea almost completely dried up.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that would have had a huge impact on the coastline of the Costa del Sol,
Right.
exposing all this land that was underwater before.
Uh,
Then when the Mediterranean refilled, sea levels went up and down like crazy.
oh, wow.
And that changed the landscape even more.
So like estuaries turning into deltas and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, shorelines moving around.
Wow.
And whole land masses could have been submerged.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It is pretty amazing. So if Silniana existed during this time of crazy coastal change, then yeah, maybe it is underwater now. Buried under sediment or even completely eroded away.
Right.
It's like trying to put together a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
It's so hard to imagine what it would have looked like.
I know, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And that's why this research from Navas and their team is so important, because they're not just looking at the Roman remains,
Uh-huh.
they're also looking at the geology of the region.
Okay.
So by combining archaeology and geomorphology, they can understand how the coastline has changed over time.
Wow, so they're really like piecing together the whole story. It's
Exactly.
like a historical detective story.
It is.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it is.
I'm starting to see how all of this fits together,
Yeah.
but I still have some questions.
Okay, like,
Like, if Las Bóvedas was part of a bigger settlement,
right?
wouldn't there be signs of other Roman activity in the area?
You're right.
I mean, it can't just be the baths.
You're thinking like an archaeologist. You're on the right track, and the research actually mentions some evidence of other Roman activities near Las Bóvedas.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, they found salting pools,
Okay.
and there's even a chance that there was a garum factory there.
A garum factory.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have my attention.
Huh.
What is garum?
Well, think of it like ancient Roman fish sauce.
Oh, okay.
It was a fermented condiment, and back then it was considered a delicacy.
Interesting.
Yeah, so to make garum, you needed a lot of fish
Okay.
and access to salt, both of which would have been affected by where the coastline and the rivers were.
So they needed to be close to the water.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Huh.
So finding a garum factory means that even with all the coastal changes, this area was still economically active during Roman times.
Right.
And that just makes me wonder more about Siciliana.
Uh-huh.
Like, how did these industries adapt when the shoreline was changing so much?
Yeah.
Did they have to move? Did they come up with new ways to do things? Like, what happened?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we don't have all the answers yet.
Okay.
But that's part of what makes this research so exciting.
Yeah.
It's making us rethink what we thought we knew about Roman settlements and how they interacted with the environment.
It's so interesting to think about how much the environment can change over time.
It is. It really makes you think.
And all this is making me really curious about what else might be hidden under the sand.
Yeah, me too.
And that's where things get even more interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, because the researchers found evidence of other Roman structures and artifacts in the area.
No way.
Yeah, so it seems like Las Bóvedas wasn't just an isolated bath complex.
Wow.
It was part of a bigger community.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but that community is gone now.
Wow. Vanished.
Yeah.
So does that mean Siciliana really existed?
Well, we can't say for sure.
Right.
Maybe the sources were talking about something else entirely.
It's possible.
But when you put all the evidence together, all the Roman structures and the historical accounts of Siciliana,
Yeah.
it makes you think that maybe there's something there.
It does, yeah.
And that's what I love about this research.
Me too.
It's not saying that it has all the answers,
Uh-huh.
but it's making us ask the right questions.
I agree.
So we started out talking about Roman baths,
Right.
and now we're talking about a possible lost city,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
a coastline that's completely different than it used to be,
Right.
and evidence of a whole ancient industry.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah, it's a historical mystery waiting to be solved.
I like that.
But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's step back for a second
Okay.
and think about the big picture here.
All right. You know, when you think about it, this research is really interesting because it shows us the challenges that coastal communities are facing today.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially in places like the Costa del Sol, where there's been so much development.
Right, the researchers talk about coastal erosion and sediment supply and how all that's made worse by things that people are doing.
Exactly. It's like we're seeing history repeat itself, but on a much larger scale.
Wow, yeah, that's a good point.
You know, the Romans might not have had to deal with huge resorts and giant buildings on the coast,
Right.
but they were still dealing with nature and all its power.
Yeah.
And their experiences, like what might have happened to Siciliana and how industries like garum production had to adapt.
Right.
Those can teach us a lot today.
So are you saying we can learn from the Romans about how to manage our coastlines?
Well, it's not so much about doing exactly what they did,
Okay.
but more about understanding the ideas behind their actions.
Okay.
The Romans, they really understood how powerful nature is.
Yeah,
And that it's better to work with it than against it.
that makes sense.
Like, they were amazing at managing water. They
Mhm.
built these complex systems of aqueducts and dams and drainage channels
Wow,
to control the water and protect their settlements from floods.
that's incredible.
It is. They were really smart about it.
It seems like today we try to fight against nature,
Yeah.
like building seawalls and things to hold back the ocean.
Right. Instead of going with the flow.
Exactly.
And those structures, they might protect us for a little while,
Uh-huh.
but they mess up natural processes, like how sediment moves around.
Oh, wow.
And that can cause problems in other areas along the coast.
Huh. So it's like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
So what are the researchers suggesting?
Well, they think a better approach is to try to understand how the coastline changes over time
Oh,
and to use that knowledge when we're planning and building things.
so thinking long term.
Yes, exactly.
This reminds me of the salting pools and that garum factory we talked about.
Yeah.
Those industries needed a specific coastal environment to survive.
Right.
So how did they deal with all the changes?
Yeah, did they just pack up and move when the coastline shifted?
Or did they find ways to keep producing?
Right, like did they innovate?
Exactly.
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
And the research doesn't give us clear answers, but it does give us some clues.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the fact that these industries existed at all shows us that they were adaptable
Okay.
and resilient.
They were able to deal with the changes in their environment.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It is. It's a really interesting area to explore further.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how they did it.
I know, it's fascinating.
It's amazing to think that something like a bath complex can tell us so much about the past, the present, and even the future.
It is. It really makes you think.
It makes me wonder what other secrets are hidden beneath the sands of the Costa del Sol.
Me too. Who knows what's out there waiting to be discovered?
And it makes you think about the lessons we can learn from the people who came before us.
Yeah, especially as we face a changing world.
It's really humbling.
It is.
This has been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has.
Exploring the mysteries of Las Bóvedas
Yeah.
and all the changes that have happened on the Costa del Sol.
It's amazing to think about how much things can change over time.
I know, and we've gone from these almost vanished Roman baths
Right.
to the idea that there might have been a whole city there that we've lost.
Yeah, and it really shows you how powerful it can be to combine archaeology and geomorphology.
Absolutely. It's like putting together pieces of a puzzle.
Exactly. You get a much clearer picture of the past that way.
You know what really blew my mind?
What's that?
That Messinian salinity crisis.
Oh, yeah.
When you were talking about how the Mediterranean Sea practically dried up,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even imagine it.
It's hard to picture, isn't it?
It really is.
And it shows you that even something like a coastline, which you think would be there forever,
Yeah.
can change drastically over time.
That's incredible.
It is, and it makes the whole mystery of Silniana even more interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it really there?
Uh-huh.
Did it disappear because of these crazy environmental changes?
Yeah.
Or is there something still buried there waiting for us to find it?
I know. So many questions.
And then on top of that, you have the evidence that the Navas team found
Yeah.
of all this other Roman activity.
The salting pools.
Right, and that possible garum factory.
Mm-hmm.
That suggests that it wasn't just a bath complex.
Yeah, it seems like there was a whole community there.
Yeah, with different industries.
Right, and they were able to adapt to all the changes happening around them.
It makes you wonder how they did it.
It really does.
You know, this whole deep dive has really made me think
Yeah, you too.
that we're not the only ones who have had to deal with things like coastal erosion and figuring out how to manage resources when the environment is changing all the time.
That's right, the Romans had their own challenges.
Yeah, they were dealing with a lot of the same things we are today.
And they learned a lot from those experiences.
Yeah, so what do you hope people take away from all of this?
I think the most important thing is to remember that coastlines aren't fixed.
Okay.
They change all the time.
Right.
And that's due to both natural forces and things that we humans do.
It's a two-way street.
Exactly. And if we can understand how dynamic coastlines are and what we can learn from the past, then we can make smarter decisions about how to manage our coasts and build communities that can handle whatever comes their way.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
And it makes me think that next time I'm at the beach, I'm going to look at it a little differently,
I think we all will.
knowing that it wasn't always like this.
Right. There's a whole history hidden beneath the sand.
And there's still so much to learn.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for taking us on this amazing deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
We've gone from Roman ruins to shifting sands, and we've seen the power of human curiosity to uncover the mysteries of the past.
It's been quite a journey.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.